Let's start here. By early 2024, Ripple was no longer just a payments company. It was evolving into something much bigger, a global financial infrastructure provider. But there was one major piece still missing, and it was sitting right in the heart of the U.S. banking system. If you've been following the series, you already know how Ripple built its foundation and pivoted into custody with Metaco and Fortress. If not, go check out those earlier episodes first. They set the stage for what happens next. Back in 2019 through 2021, Ripple built its foundation. Small engineering teams across Iceland, London, and Asia created the network that powered RippleNet. Then in 2023, Ripple changed direction. Instead of just connecting banks, it began acquiring the infrastructure those banks would rely on, starting with Metaco, the custody platform that gave Ripple institutional-grade safekeeping for digital assets. But there was still a problem. Metaco gave Ripple technology. Fortress was supposed to give it U.S. compliance, but that deal fell apart. So in 2024, Ripple went after something stronger, a fully regulated trust company that could serve as the legal backbone for everything it was about to build. That company was Standard Custodian Trust Company, and this is where the story really turns. By early 2024, Ripple had nearly everything it needed to operate globally. It had payment corridors, exchange connections, and its own institutional custody tech. But to operate inside the United States, under full compliance, you can't just have software. You need a license. Specifically, a trust license issued by regulators. Metaco was based in Switzerland. It could handle international custody and tokenization, but it wasn't U.S. regulated. Ripple's future products, including its upcoming dollar-backed stablecoin RLUSD, needed a regulated U.S. custodian. Without it, Ripple couldn't legally hold the reserves backing that stablecoin or serve major American clients. That's what made Standard Custody so valuable. Standard Custody was already a licensed trust company regulated by the New York Department of Financial Services, known as NYDFS. That's one of the toughest financial watchdogs in the country. Their oversight covers everything from cybersecurity to capital reserves and record keeping. Owning Standard Custody gave Ripple an instant seat at the table. Let's pause for a moment on what custody actually means here. When most people hear the word, they think of a crypto wallet or a cold storage device that holds private keys. That's retail custody. It's self-managed, personal, and unregulated. Institutional custody is different. It's like having a safety deposit box inside a regulated bank, except instead of gold or paper certificates, you're storing digital assets. A qualified custodian is legally responsible for protecting those assets. They follow strict audit, reporting, and insurance requirements so clients, like banks, funds, or corporations, can safely hold digital value under law. That's what Ripple bought. A digital vault with legal authority. This move wasn't about hype or headlines, it was about positioning Ripple for the next stage. One where compliance and credibility would matter more than buzzwords or token price. Remember, in 2024, the regulatory environment in the U.S. was tightening fast. Congress was debating stablecoin legislation. The SEC and CFTC were both pushing for clarity on who had jurisdiction. And Ripple, after years of dealing with the SEC case, understood better than anyone that the fastest way forward wasn't to fight regulation, it was to embrace it. Ripple had already applied for a U.S. trust charter and even a bank license, but both were still pending by 2024. Those applications can take years to approve. Acquiring Standard Custody allowed Ripple to skip the waiting game and instantly gain regulatory coverage in one of the most important financial jurisdictions in the world. That was a big deal. For context, Standard Custody wasn't some new startup. It was founded by Wall Street veterans from the New York Stock Exchange and Intercontinental Exchange, the same parent company behind the NYSE. These were people who understood traditional finance but saw where the world was heading. They built Standard Custody to bring Wall Street-level security and governance into the digital asset world. For Ripple, that was the perfect match. Metaco brought the technology and tokenization capabilities. Standard Custody brought the regulatory legitimacy and the U.S. footprint. Together they formed the complete custody stack Ripple needed. one side powered by innovation, the other by compliance. It's worth noting how few crypto companies were thinking this far ahead in 2024. Most were still focused on trading platforms, NFTs, or chasing token speculation. Ripple was building the infrastructure layer, the pipes, the vaults, the legal frameworks that would make digital assets usable in traditional finance. And that's where RLUSD fits in. While RLUSD wasn't fully launched yet, 2024 was the year Ripple laid its foundation. The idea was to create a regulated dollar-backed stablecoin directly tied to Ripple's payment ecosystem. To do that legally in the US, Ripple needed a trust company capable of holding the cash reserves that backed every RLUSD token. Standard Custody made that possible. It provided Ripple with a compliant path to hold those reserves, manage institutional accounts, and issue digital assets under strict New York trust law. That's why the acquisition was often described as the US backbone of Ripple's upcoming stablecoin. It literally gave RLUSD a legal home base. But it also meant something much bigger. It showed how Ripple was evolving. Between 2019 and 2021, Ripple was building the rails. In 2023, it started building the vaults. By 2024, it was stitching everything together: compliance, custody, and liquidity. Standard Custody represented the last major building block Ripple needed to turn from a payments company into a financial infrastructure company. This was also the moment Ripple began to blur the line between crypto and traditional finance. It wasn't trying to replace banks anymore. It was building technology those banks could actually use. With Standard Custody in the mix, Ripple could now say to regulators and institutions, "We can handle your assets under the same standards you already trust." That changed everything about Ripple's positioning in the US. Inside the company, this acquisition was seen as the quiet cornerstone. It didn't grab headlines like the Metaco deal, but it mattered more. It meant Ripple could now manage US institutional assets with full legal backing. It could service corporate clients, custody reserves, and prepare for a future where digital dollars and tokenized assets became part of everyday financial operations. And while the story doesn't go beyond 2024 here, you can see where the path was heading. Ripple had the technology, the legal licenses, and now the US trust infrastructure to connect everything together. When people talk about Ripple's master plan, this was the part that solidified it. Without Standard Custody, the US half of the puzzle wouldn't exist. So while this acquisition didn't make front-page news or send XRP soaring overnight, it was a turning point in Ripple's evolution. It proved that being compliant and being innovative aren't opposites. They're the same path if you want to build something that lasts. Standard Custody was Ripple's way of saying, we're here to stay, we're regulated, and we're ready to operate inside the same system the rest of finance depends on. And that's exactly what Ripple needed as it moved toward the next chapter of its transformation. This channel is for educational and entertainment purposes only and is not financial advice. Always do your own research and keep the discussion respectful. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking, subscribing, leaving a comment, or sharing it with a friend.